I've been doing this thing where I'll just wear like a tank top and then just put a sweater over and being like, yeah, I'm totally warm. Hello potatoes, it's Kato Potato and welcome back to another video. I feel like considering how much I drive my car, I don't really film in her very much. So it's a video for me to have an excuse to film in my car. There were videos at one point where I was like, it's like my first tag and you do all of your different firsts and people will mention like their first car or the first time they got their license, first time they got in an accident or whatever it is. And so I feel like I wanted to do an entire tag completely dedicated to me getting my license, me getting my first car, and now me getting this car. Yeah, let's get started. In the US, you can get a license when you're 16, and when you're 15, you can get a permit, which is you take like this test and basically know all the different rules about the road and stuff like that. I mean, I studied like on this little app that I had, I want to say like 10 to 15 minutes before I went in to get my permit test, and I passed. I definitely did not get every question right. But I passed and they gave me my permit then. A couple months afterwards, during the summer, I enrolled in my school's driver's ed course, which in that course basically learn more about the rules, and then you can do this thing where you can essentially take your driver's test at 15 and get this thing called like a gold card. I don't have mine because you've essentially give it to them and then they exchange it for your license once you turn 16. But you go ahead and take your driver's test. So when you turn 16, all you have to do is go to the DMV, you give them the gold card, and then they just take your picture and give you your license. So that's what I did. But yeah, it was really funny because during the driver's ed course, you get set up. So basically you're in the driver's seat and then you have your instructor right next to you. And then in our case, we had two other people in the back. So you would rotate like every 20 minutes, I think, because we had like an hour duration. And I remember the first time, because I was so nervous, I needed to make a joke out of it and be ridiculous. And I basically wrote up this contract, obviously not like official, basically saying I'm not liable if I accidentally crash this car and we all die. The driver's instructor found it really funny. The other kids, not really so much, but they all kind of chuckled and I ended up driving. It totally was fine. I also almost crashed during my driver's test, which is fun. We were at a four-way and I was about to turn right, but I couldn't see because there was like a hill, and that car just sped through, zoomed by us, and I was like, oh my gosh, if I hadn't been paying attention, we would have definitely crashed. But I didn't, thankfully didn't, and got my gold card and got my license and all that good stuff. But even though I live in the US and I have for most of my life, my family is still very traditionally Korean, and I feel like coming from like a small town, and it was a pretty well-off town, so a lot of people had the luxury of getting their kids right at 16 a car. But my family was comfortable, but you know, not to the point where you can afford a whole another vehicle for, you know, someone who is so new at driving, and plus insurance would have been through the roof for me. Didn't drive for the next like 3 years. It was not until like my high school graduation where they decided like, hey, okay, you should be getting a car because you're about to go to college. There was a man who my dad worked with, and he was about to leave for Korea and needed to sell his car, and so he sold it to us. My parents covered the actual expense of the car, and then I covered all the repairs. My parents did most, and then I covered a good bit as well. And it was a giant SUV, but it was kind of like an older model, and we didn't find this out until later. But because the dude used to live in a colder environment, basically the bottom of the car was like very rusted over from when it was snowing, and it didn't seem like he took that well care of the car. So anytime I had to get repairs on that car, it was ridiculous. There were bolts that were pretty much like super glued into it because there was no other way they can screw it on. And then obviously when you're trying to remove it, you can't remove it at that point. But yeah, I mean, I love that car. I named her Bianca because she was a big white SUV. She actually ended up being really nice because when I decided to leave home, I packed everything in my car and was able to just use my car instead of a moving service to move into my new apartment. And so there are like pictures that I have still where like the trunk is like filled to the brim. And also there were some college days where a big group of us, it was kind of late. We wanted to go to this donut shop that was like 24 hours, I think. Or it may have been open until like 3 a.m. I don't know. I forget. But we like all hopped in my car because we could fit everyone. And I drove, and it was it was such a fun memory, because we didn't have to be like, who's gonna get in whose car? No, we're just gonna all fit into Cato's car. But on like a day-to-day basis, it was really cumbersome. Most of the time I just needed for like just basic commute, like going to school, going to work, all that good stuff. So for me, it was just really hard. Also, driving in Atlanta is super duper difficult when you have a bigger car. The road seems to be like this big, like it's kind of ridiculous. But like I mentioned, this car kind of was a little bit older, so we had a couple of issues. First time I had to get my car towed was like, I want to say like 2 or 3 months into me having this car. It had not been that long. I got the car in like July, and I think like August or September is when this happened. But basically, I was driving a new friend, because Tech's campus isn't that big, but when it's super late in the night and you have to get from, I think it was West Campus over the road to the East Campus side, it's a little bit of a walk, and so I wanted to give this new friend a ride, but then my car stopped at a stoplight, and I had to have like the emergency lights on, and then Georgia Tech's police, GTPD, had to come and push my car while I had it in neutral, into like this little corner, so I'm out of the road. It was just ridiculous. Thankfully, we were on campus, because I can't imagine if it had happened like on a major road or whatever not. I felt so bad for the friend, because I was like, I'm so sorry, like I told you I would take you home, but I can't. I'm so sorry. But yeah, I had to have my boyfriend come and try and check if it was a battery. We tried to jump start it with his car, but this was like 2 a.m. Got it towed. It was something with the wires, but we eventually got it fixed. But like I mentioned, it was like 2 months into me having this car, and I was like, we're having problems already. Big foreshadowing. And then last thing I'll talk about with my old car is emissions. This is my first time doing emissions, and oh my goodness. I understand why emissions is a thing that exists, but like my car, at around like October or so, my check engine light came on, and so I figured it was just I just needed an oil change, so I got an oil change, but it still did not go off, and so I was like, okay, I mean, I'll just keep an eye on it, but nothing really else besides that. And then once it comes to emissions, which January is my birthday, so you have to get your emissions done during your birthday month, I try and go, and they say, hey, because your engine oil light is on, you will automatically fail emissions. And then I have my car like reset to see if it will basically like erase it out of the system, and then do it again. Failed again. Until I had to get an extension on my tag for like 30 days, because I was like, I can't figure this out in like the next week that I need to get this done. But thankfully one of my boyfriend's friends works at a car shop, and he's so nice, but I felt so bad because he mentioned that I don't want to work on your car, if I'm being honest, because like I mentioned, it's so rusted. We ended up just trying to replace the O2 sensors, and thankfully that seemed to do the trick. I drove it around for like a little bit and then tested emissions, and it passed. The third time's a charm. Felt like at that point I was like, oh, this is in January, or this is like January or February of 2022, and I knew that by the end of the year I probably needed to get a new car. This little baby is Astrid. Obviously you only see like the interior of it, and this is just like a car seat cover for this upcoming car. I knew that I didn't want to just buy it straight with cash. If I were thinking about the budget of that, it was inevitable that I was going to essentially end up with another car like Bianca, where it's obviously very cheap. It will get you from point A to point B, but it might have a lot of problems in between. So I wanted to think, I probably should start financing a car, probably should have like a nicer of a car, just to make sure that we don't have that many issues with cars in the future. My boyfriend and I started looking for cars online around end of October, because my goal was to have a car by the end of 2022. My boyfriend found this one car that was at this dealership, and it was a little bit further away, but for the make and model as well as the price of the car that they had listed, because it was on like his last call kind of thing, we were like, okay, that seems like a pretty good option. Let's just go test drive it. Because this specific car model I wanted to just try and drive, because it's pretty popular. I honestly expected that I was going to try driving this car and be like, oh, okay, it's nice, but probably not going to buy the car the day of. But my boyfriend is way more knowledgeable about that and knew way more about like negotiating, and so we ended up getting a pretty good deal for my car. So yeah, we ended up getting it that day that we went to test drive. Definitely don't suggest doing this. Obviously try and go to different places if you can, but we knew that for all the different ones that we had looked online, this one was going to be the best deal. Something that was manageable enough for me. And if I'm being honest, going to the car dealership, my car Bianca was already having a lot of red flags. I'll show the dashboard of the car, but I feel like if I had waited any longer to try and trade in Bianca, I probably wouldn't have made as much of an offer for her because of all the lights that were already on. Traded her in. She was actually the down payment on this car, which I'm surprised I was even able to trade her in for anything, but she still was a good chunk of what I ended up having to get for her. And yeah, I got a car loan. We did have a couple of issues with the car loan because basically they were like, you're 19, you've never bought a car before, we can only allow you this amount of money. So I actually got this car for cheaper than what they had on the website and what I initially had it for, because essentially the loan company wouldn't agree to give me more money, but that's fine. She's a newer model, so it's been really nice to have something a lot smoother. She's a lot smaller than Bianca too, so I feel like it's way more manageable, but it's not, you can kind of see there's plenty of space for me, so I don't feel like really cramped in here. So I love her. I love Astrid. And this I thought was going to be the most complicated part, but I had to get the tag transferred onto this car. Surprisingly, it wasn't that difficult. I just took it to my nearest DMV and I was like, I just need to transfer this tag. And thankfully it was during my birthday month too, so I went ahead and had to like get a new sticker for emissions as well. Got everything transferred pretty easy peasy. I did have to submit something that said that I did sell my old car. Pretty much other than that, stuck that old license plate onto this car, and now we're just chilling. So I feel like everything else, I just have to change the make and model of my car because it has the same license plate number. This car hasn't had any problems, so I'm just chilling, I'm just going, I'm just Gucci. But yeah, if you like this video, please just show it a thumbs up and comment down below. Any ideas for car talk videos? Obviously, this video was just talking about my cars and my licenses and all that good stuff. But if I could just also like, just have like nice car talks, that'd be nice too. Maybe my next tattoo tour will be in this car. I don't know. Subscribe down below for more interesting content like this, and hope you have a great day. Wishing you the best as always. Cato, rolling an app.